hospital in each community is known as a haven of hope. It is a place where the sick may come with confidence and faith. Faith in those who will treat them, cure them, care for them, and protect them. They entrust themselves and their faith to the doctors and surgeons, to the nurses and orderlies, the technicians in the laboratory and in the X-ray room, the engineers and the maintenance men, the housekeeper and service personnel, the superintendent, and those who comprise the administrative staff. All are important members of the hospital team. They are responsible for and to the faith entrusted in them. And yet, in spite of all they may strive to do, in spite of all and everyone's good intentions, this can happen. Why? Well, it happened because no building is ever completely safe from fire. That is especially true of a hospital. A hospital combines within its walls fire hazards which are related to a great variety of occupations. The fire hazards of a factory. A hospital operates heating and power plants, workshops, and many types of machinery.
Wherever there's machinery, this might happen.
The fire hazards of a restaurant. Hospital kitchens are often larger and busier than many restaurant kitchens.
What?
The fire hazards of commercial laundries. Hospitals have laundries too, big and busy laundries. And a hospital might be compared, yes, to an arsenal.
Even as little as the daily supply of oxygen, nitrous oxides, cyclopropane, and ether represents the explosive power of a good-sized bomb.
And last but not least, a hospital houses a great number of patients, visited by numbers of relatives and friends, many with dangerous habits.
You shouldn't have done that. Guess nothing happened this time.
So this, then, is your hospital. Within its walls, so many fire hazards. Some very basic precautions must be taken. Should a fire occur in any part of the hospital, if left to its own devices, it will spread very rapidly. To prevent it from spreading horizontally, self-closing fire and cutoff doors are installed to act as fire and smoke barriers. Therefore, no matter what part you play on the hospital team, see that doors like this one are never obstructed. See to it that these doors can do the job they're designed to do. Fires always tend to spread upwards, just like the flame consuming this match. That's why open stairways, elevator shafts, open laundry chutes, and dumbwaiters always act as flues. Always try to pull a fire, or gases and fumes, to the upper floors, sometimes within seconds. For this reason, a minor hospital fire, if there is such a thing, often turns into a catastrophe which shocks the world. To stop fire from spreading, all staircases, elevator shafts, and other vertical openings are enclosed in fire-resistant materials. So again, let's remind ourselves. When you see a door to a stairwell open, close it. Close it at once. Fire now cannot spread upwards through this staircase. Whatever the reason, do not keep elevator doors open. and dumbwaiters. Hey, remember that match? How it burned upwards? That's right. Exit doors should never be obstructed, never locked. Don't laugh. It has happened. Check the door. Make sure it's not locked. Thanks anyway, Doc. Exit signs are always illuminated, or better, should be. And you may have automatic sprinklers in your hospital. Automatic sprinklers are very efficient firefighters. They will give the alarm and at the same time extinguish the fire. Make sure the sprinkler valve is never turned off. If a valve is turned off, this shaft is screwed inwards, and the valve would appear to you like this. You don't see the shaft. Should any one of you ever discover a turned-off sprinkler system, report it at once. This is such a threat to your hospital that no time must be lost. There are also, or should be, other firefighting devices in your hospital. Of course, hand fire extinguishers are familiar objects. But how many of you, or how few, know exactly where they are? Find out. And then memorize the floor plan of your hospital. And X marks the spots where hand extinguishers are located. Once you know where to find the fire extinguishers in a hurry, and in a hurry you'll be when you need them, know how to operate them. Read the instructions. Study them at once. And not when you have to use the extinguisher. It'll be too late then. This, then, is your hospital. Being a hospital, it is vulnerable to fire in many ways. But it also has many defenses against fire. To make these defenses do the best possible job, something else is needed. What is that something else? Yes, a fire safety program. A fire safety program tries to achieve three major goals: good housekeeping, good maintenance, good discipline, which all add up to saving lives. The need for good housekeeping is urgent and ever-present. Good housekeeping means many things. It means, for instance, that you must get rid of any accumulation of rubbish or debris. It means oily rags, which give off flammable fumes, must be kept in metal containers. And even there, they should not be allowed to accumulate. It means care and precaution whenever you handle flammable liquids. Keep them in approved self-closing cans. Paints. Always store them in metal cabinets. Good housekeeping means careful checking whenever you install partitions or make other structural changes. Check with your supplier and be sure that only flame-resistant materials are used. Many a wallboard you consider flame-resistant is apt to fool you. And there are other hazards, hundreds of them, all over the hospital, in all departments. It is up to you to find them and to eliminate them. Good maintenance is the second chapter of your fire safety program. Good maintenance sees to it that nowhere in your hospital will you ever find improperly supported wires. Such wires will fray easily. Even electrical fuses, when used incorrectly, can be dangerous. When it is specified on a fuse box that 15-ampere fuses should be used, and you insert this fuse, a 30-ampere fuse, the electrical circuit supposedly protected by this fuse can easily be overloaded. And soon, there might be a fire. Good maintenance requires regular and thorough inspection of boilers, power plants, operating rooms, elevator machinery, and the many other installations you have in a hospital. This, then, leads us to the third chapter, good discipline. Good discipline concerns itself with people only, with you who work in the hospital, with the patients who are under your care, and their visitors. Good discipline also is deeply concerned with a certain habit. Careless smoking causes most fires. So be sure that these signs are posted prominently. Be sure that they are seen, read, and understood. No smoking. Smoking is prohibited. Smoking is always forbidden for very good reasons. Not all, however, as obvious as this one. An ounce of prevention. That is the best idea, isn't it? However, because smoking is popular and so helpful, it is permitted in some parts of the hospital. This ashtray is no good, too shallow. Have suitable ashtrays, deep ashtrays, of which there are many types. And speaking of ashtrays, remember?
Guess nothing happened this time.
Are you sure? It is much later now, and our patient is fast asleep. When fire is discovered, there are definite and specific actions which must follow immediately. First, if the patient is within immediate danger of smoke or flame, he or she must be moved to a safer area. Second, once the patient is out, close the door. This is very important. Third, notify the switchboard operator at once in as calm a voice as possible so as not to alarm any patients who may overhear. Report the exact location and the extent of the fire. Fourth, attempt to put out the fire with hand extinguishers. Meanwhile, the switchboard operator immediately notifies the fire department. She then calls the nurses and interns' quarters, the hospital superintendent, the chief engineer, and others. Usually a code signal spread over the public address system or by bells will alert these and all others without alarming the patients. The duty fire brigade, composed of trained hospital personnel, arrives to fight the fire until the city fire department can take charge. The hospital superintendent also hurries to the scene to evaluate the situation and at once establishes communications with the rest of the hospital through the switchboard. While the fire is being fought locally, every department in the hospital responds with a condition of readiness in case the fire gets out of control. The engineering department stands ready to isolate the threatened area by cutting off ventilation, gas, refrigeration, or oxygen. All nurses report on the double to their duty stations to await instructions for removal of patients if the danger continues. The linen room personnel stand by to distribute blankets and bathrobes. Clinical personnel stand by to administer emergency first aid. Orderlies and janitors close all windows, doors, and dumbwaiters in threatened floor areas. See that cutoff doors are closed, that exit doors are not blocked. While all these precautions are being taken, other personnel, not so engaged, have assembled in an employee pool, prepared for any special duty which may be assigned by the superintendent or whoever is in charge. Constant communication with the firefighting detail and all departments of the hospital is maintained. Should the telephone service be interrupted, messengers from the employee pool maintain the vital lines of communication. Well, an extremely dangerous incident has been brought to a conclusion, to a happy conclusion. It is the result of careful planning and foresight. In short, it is the result of an efficient fire safety program. In developing such a fire safety program, all departments should be consulted and individual responsibilities clearly assigned. Representatives of your local fire department and literature from agencies who have made fire protection their business will provide you with expert guidance and advice. The organization and continuous training of hospital fire brigades, one for each shift, is a vital step in fire control. Here also, consultation with a specialist is indicated. And the specialist in this case is the professional fireman, an expert who is eager to help and well trained to fight fire. To assist the city firemen to become familiar with the building and grounds layout, they should be invited to visit the hospital and tour its premises. Such familiarity will save priceless minutes in an emergency. The final responsibility, that of coordinating the fire safety program, should be vested with one individual, to be called the hospital fire marshal. In many hospitals, this assignment is rotated among the various departments in order that all may share the common responsibility. The final objective of any fire safety program, of course, is to save lives. If the fire, which started this way, had gotten out of control, the fire marshal would have been forced to give the order for evacuation. It might have been a limited evacuation or a total evacuation. Be prepared for either. The type of evacuation will depend upon the location of the fire and its progress. First, all patients in immediate danger are moved to a place of temporary safety, toward stairways or fire escapes. Patients in other parts of the floor, as well as patients in floors above, are prepared for similar evacuation. Then, should it be necessary, the patients can safely be taken downstairs and let out of the hospital. In addition to knowing where to evacuate patients, every employee must know how to evacuate them. Babies require the greatest care. They should be individually wrapped in blankets to protect them from smoke or exposure. A reserve of oxygen must go along when incubator babies are being evacuated. Of course, nurses must stay with these little charges all the time. Other patients are evacuated according to their physical condition. Ambulatory patients. After making certain that all are accounted for, a responsible person leads them to safety according to the prepared evacuation plan. Always remember, keep calm. Keep them calm. And don't count on using any elevator which is close to the fire. Then there are the helpless patients. Quietly and assuredly, so as not to create panic, move them away from the fire. If wheelchairs or stretchers are not available in sufficient number, these patients, securely wrapped in their bedding, may be placed on the floor and dragged out of danger. There's also an ingenious method called nurse's carry, by which one nurse, unaided, can carry a heavy patient to safety. Helpless patients may be transferred to litters for evacuation downstairs. Should there not be enough litters, you would have to carry them. Additional help from the employee pool may be needed then. Well, This, then, is the story of fire prevention in hospitals. But it also is your story, because it is your enthusiasm, your team spirit, your alertness, supported by a fire safety program, conceived by you, and tailored to the specific needs of your hospital, which will bring fire safety to you and to those who have faith in you.
You're all familiar with the headlines that point up the critical seriousness of the traffic accident problems throughout the country. The headlines that add up to over 5,000 people killed and over 180,000 injured every year at an annual cost in excess of $1 billion. There's a story behind these headlines that most people aren't fully aware of. 20% of these deaths and injuries are not a driver or even a passenger in an automobile. 1 out of every 5 is a person on foot. 1 out of every 5 traffic casualties is a pedestrian. That's over 1,000 pedestrians killed every year and over 20,000 injured. And about half of these accidents happen after dark, even though the number of pedestrians and vehicles out at night is far below the number during the day. It happens every night, just like this. The University of California's Institute of Transportation and Traffic Engineering filmed these scenes using realistic life-size dummies to show the effects on the human body of being struck at only 30 miles per hour. These, of course, are merely tests with dummies. But this same thing is happening every night to real people. And in most cases, it happens because the pedestrian is lost in the surrounding darkness, and the driver just can't see him in time to stop. For years, people have been considered reasonably safe walking down the highway after dark if they were wearing white or light-colored outer clothing. But studies show that even white garments aren't as visible to oncoming drivers as most people think. Here are 4 pedestrians. At about 65 feet, the one with dark clothing disappears. At 80 feet, the second pedestrian with red clothing disappears. At 150 feet, the one wearing yellow can't be seen. And at 180 feet, even the person in white clothing is invisible to the motorist. Now, how fast can a motorist react and stop his vehicle after he has seen a pedestrian? In this demonstration, a cardboard cutout is used to represent a pedestrian. At 30 miles per hour, on a flat, dry road, a distance of 72 feet is required for the average driver to react and stop. Had this been a child in dark clothing, he could have been a casualty. At 60 miles per hour, the odds are 100% that he would have been. At 60 miles per hour, the stopping distance is increased to 260 feet. Even stark white clothing fails to provide complete protective nighttime visibility. Add rain and the glare of oncoming headlights or the effects of alcohol, and the driver has even less time to avoid an accident. White clothing simply cannot offer all the protection you need at night. Nor can the bright fluorescent colors. Fluorescent colors are great on overcast days or at dusk, but at night, they actually prove to be no more visible than ordinary clothing. To be safe at night, you must be seen. And if white or fluorescent cloth won't protect pedestrians, what will? Reflective materials will. Reflective materials that are specially designed and manufactured for pedestrians. These special reflective materials return the light from headlights directly back to the driver, Although the person wearing the reflective material can't see this reflection, the driver of the car gets a brilliant reflected signal in plenty of time to avoid an accident. Now, reflective materials aren't new. Many provinces use them on license plates. And everybody recognizes the familiar red stop sign that flashes the same red warning at night that it does by day. Reflective signs warn of dangerous turns, provide information, and alert you to road hazards. Reflectors, or lights, are now required by law on the sides and rear of trucks and automobiles to make them visible to drivers at night. But reflectors are not required by law for the protection of pedestrians, who are the most vulnerable of all nighttime users of the roads. Many pedestrians, whose work requires them to be on the roadways at night, already wear reflective materials, and it makes good sense. Policemen, trainmen, paper boys, firemen. In fact, almost all the fire coats purchased in Canada are reflectorized. What about the rest of us? It makes sense for us, too, to take advantage of this kind of protection. These tags, for instance, are commonplace in Europe. Pinned to your pocket or purse, they're carried just as easily as your car keys. When you're out at night, just drop them out to flash a bright warning as the tag twists and turns from the normal movement of your walking. The reflected light attracts the attention of oncoming motorists and gives them ample time to react. Inconspicuous reflectors can even be applied to the instep of shoes. These reflectors in no way change the appearance of shoes and are all but hidden during the day. But at night, they stand out brilliantly in the beams of headlights. It's hard to believe that the sole of your shoe is this visible when you walk, but there it is. Good-looking reflective materials are easily applied to canes, hats, umbrellas, briefcases, and purses, or styled into attractive emblems and wearing apparel. They can be designed as attractive appliques that will enhance the appearance of a garment by day and give brilliant protection at night. Just how effective are these reflective materials? Here again are the 4 pedestrians in a combination of dark and light clothing. This time, they are joined by 4 pedestrians who are identically dressed, except that they are using reflective materials designed for pedestrians. Briefcase markings, reflective buttons and trim, reflective material under the cuffs and collar, and one on the instep of each shoe. The 4 pedestrians without reflective markings are lost in the darkness at a distance of about 180 feet. But the 4 pedestrians with reflective markings will be brightly visible at distances of over 500 feet. Now, recalling that it takes about 260 feet to react and stop a car at 60 miles per hour, we know that the 4 pedestrians with reflective markings are provided with safe nighttime visibility. Night visibility for the pedestrian means everybody, not just the people who work at hazardous jobs. As soon as you leave your car, step off the bus, or walk out the front door of your house, you are a pedestrian. And if you aren't wearing reflective materials, you're an invisible pedestrian, the most vulnerable kind. People on foot are not the only ones experiencing this tragic increase in nighttime accidents. Each year, over 200 motorcyclists and 150 bicyclists are killed in accidents involving motor vehicles. Again, A large number of these accidents occur needlessly during the hours of darkness. Of course, all motorcycles and bicycles should carry the approved rear reflectors, and when broken or damaged, they should be replaced. However, a high number of cyclist accidents occur when the cycle is crossing the roadway. Reflectorization added to the side of the cycle itself identifies the object to the motorist and gives visibility protection to anyone riding it. But since the rider actually makes up over 50% of the visible area, it is important that both the vehicle and the rider be made visible with reflective materials. Since we've seen reflective materials on traffic signs, on license plates, and even on some policemen and firemen, why then haven't we used reflective protectors ourselves? Well, maybe it's because we haven't realized how invisible we really are. Another reason may be that it just never occurred to us that there are these inexpensive and simple ways to let the motorist know that we are out there in front of him without worrying about having a flashlight that works or having it available when we need it. Of all people using the roads and streets, the pedestrian is the slowest and most ill-equipped for the uneven match of man versus machine. Yet this slow-moving, unprotected road user is the only one who is allowed on public roads at night without any light or reflector whatsoever. It is not mandatory at this time for pedestrians to protect themselves and the drivers of motor vehicles by carrying lights or wearing retroreflective material. Make certain that you and all the members of your family, young and old alike, wear reflective clothing or use protective reflectors. It's a matter of life itself.
Sun, sand, and surf. This is no ordinary rescue. Absence of pulse and dilated pupils are signs that the heart is stopped. At the first opportunity, an ambulance is called. The young man's life has been saved by mouth-to-mouth breathing and heart compression, but he'll need follow-up care at the hospital. Later that day, they picked up his surfboard. He would live to use it again. One of man's oldest concerns is the restoration of life, and his ancient belief is that the beating heart and breathing body are intimately, vitally joined together. This prehistoric painting in Europe's Pindle Cave is considered the world's oldest anatomical representation of the heart. Ancient man was aware of its relationship to life. The idea that the heart and breathing together constitute a life force persists through the ages, from Paleolithic man to native peoples today. The Zuni Indians of the southwestern United States showed the life force as a line connecting the mouth and the heart. Man has always known that as long as the body breathes and the heart beats, life is sustained. If either stops, death will soon occur. Death and sleep look much the same. So primitive man tried to wake the victim by slapping, making loud noises, or even putting live coals on his body. The ancient Chinese combined a head-down position with pressure on the stomach, with, of course, full cooperation of obliging livestock. In 1837, the Royal Humane Society of London advocated the use of bellows for resuscitation, but the bellows proved better at reviving fires than reviving people. The Dutch became quite adept at rolling victims over barrels. In 1857, England's Dr. Sylvester developed the first manual method of artificial respiration to be universally recognized. Next came the Schaefer method, and after 1932, use of the Holger-Nielsen method became widespread. Following World War II, the American Red Cross, feeling that the manual methods were not the final solution, made grants to the University of Illinois for further study. The United States Army, spurred by an enemy's use of nerve gases in warfare, sponsored a coordinated research program. These studies, as summarized in the Journal of the American Medical Association, have shown the unequivocal superiority of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation over all manual methods in all age groups. Ease of administration and high efficiency produced widespread and spectacular results. But artificial respiration was not always a complete solution. Many cases require more than artificial respiration. America's #1 killer, heart disease, strikes down over 100 people every hour. Electric shock and other accidents which affect the heart add to this toll of death. Many of these people could be saved by an effective first aid measure for restoring heartbeat and circulation. This breakthrough came in 1960 when 3 scientists at the Johns Hopkins Medical School developed closed chest heart massage. Today, mouth-to-mouth breathing and external heart compression are the most effective means of emergency resuscitation. They may be needed in heart attack, electric shock, drowning, suffocation, gas poisoning, overdose of drugs, or any time that respiration or circulation have stopped. During normal respiration and circulation, oxygen is carried to all parts of the body by the cells in the bloodstream. if breathing or heartbeats stop. The brain, which is the most sensitive tissue of the body, becomes seriously damaged after 4 minutes without oxygen. Chances of recovery decrease with each passing minute. Every second counts during these critical moments when a life hangs in the balance. To prevent irreparable brain damage, you must know beforehand how to diagnose and treat the emergency immediately. The 3 basic steps to remember are the ABCs of resuscitation. Open the air passage. Restore breathing. Restore circulation. Let us examine the first step, maintaining an open air passage. In this training session, a physician is using an air passage model to demonstrate this principle. During normal breathing, the air passages are open. If a person becomes unconscious, the head flexes and the jaw falls back. The tongue, which is attached to the jaw, falls against the throat and blocks the air passage. This X-ray shows the tongue obstructing the air passage in an unconscious patient. The air passage remains blocked until the head is tilted to maximum extension. The first thing then, in an emergency, is to tilt the head back to open the air passage. This can be done by placing the fingers at the angle of the jaw and pushing forward, or by putting the thumb in the mouth and lifting the jaw. But the simplest way is to lift the neck and tilt the head back. In many cases, opening the air passage is all that is necessary for breathing to resume spontaneously. If respiration does not begin when the head is tilted back, begin breathing for the victim at once. The mouth-to-mouth method of artificial respiration is demonstrated on a training mannequin. First, lift the neck and tilt the head back. Seal the nose with your fingers. Take a deep breath and blow forcefully into the mouth. Remove your mouth to enable the victim to exhale. Watch the chest to see that it rises. Repeat every 5 seconds. Some people prefer to seal the nose with their cheek when doing mouth-to-mouth respiration. An alternative to mouth-to-mouth is the mouth-to-nose method of resuscitation. In the case of small children, seal both the mouth and nose with your mouth. There are variations in technique, but the most important things in artificial respiration are extend the head and inflate the lungs. Remember, it's your breath that can save a life. Sometimes maintaining an open air passage and breathing for the victim are not enough. It is then necessary to restore circulation. The heart is a pump that forces out blood and produces a pulse with each contraction. This heart is beating normally and is monitored here on an oscilloscope which shows the normal heart action. This is ventricular fibrillation. The individual muscles contract independently without coordination, a useless activity that does not circulate blood. Here, its irregular pattern is being traced. This condition often occurs during electric shock, drowning, or heart attack. This is cardiac standstill. When the heart stops, there is no circulation or pulse, and no activity is recorded on the oscilloscope. In emergencies, when time is vital, and these instruments are not available, we must rely on other methods to detect ineffective heart action which causes death. First, feel for the carotid or neck pulse just beside the Adam's apple. If you cannot feel a pulse, quickly check the pupil. If blood is circulating, the pupil contracts when the eyelid is raised. but if circulation has stopped, it remains widely open. No pulse and dilated pupils mean that death is imminent. To restore circulation, you should know how to apply external heart compression. The heart lies in the middle of the chest, directly under the breastbone or sternum. To compress the heart, pressure is applied manually to the sternum. First, locate the lower half of the sternum. Place the heel of one hand on the lower sternum. The other hand is placed on top. Compress the sternum with enough pressure to move it 1.5 to 2 inches on an adult. The heart is compressed between the sternum and spine, forcing blood out. Relaxation of pressure allows the heart to refill. Only the heel of the hand is placed on the sternum, and the fingers do not touch the ribs or chest. Heart compression circulates blood, but must be used with mouth-to-mouth breathing. In a resuscitation emergency, first open the air passage. Next, give 5 or 6 breaths. Check the pulse and pupils. If these are normal, continue mouth to mouth. But if no pulse can be detected and the pupil is dilated, begin heart compression at once. When there is only one rescuer, he compresses the heart 15 times at the rate of once a second. Then quickly inflates the lungs twice. Continue this 15-to-2 rhythm. Proper heart compression should produce a simulated blood pressure of 100 millimeters of mercury or more, as shown on the manometer. External heart compression is best performed by 2 operators. One compresses the heart 60 times a minute, while the other breathes for the victim. Here, the rescuer gives a breath after every 5th compression. Inflation of the lungs is easier and more effective when done between compressions, because the rescuer is not inflating against the downward pressure of the sternum. Interposing breaths in this way allows you to see the chest rise. Should resuscitation be required over a prolonged period of time, it is possible for the rescuers to change positions without interrupting the rhythm. Trainees must be taught and practice external heart compression under the supervision of a physician. The physician can give instruction in proper timing, correct positioning of the hands, and the amount of sternum pressure required. Improper technique can result in broken ribs or internal injuries, but these things need not happen if the rescuer is properly drilled and trained. Here, the actual technique is applied to an unconscious person. The hand position and technique are identical for men and women. Slow motion photography reveals the effectiveness of heart compression without damage to the ribs or internal organs. After each compression, the hands are relaxed completely to permit expansion of the chest. Well-drilled teamwork provides optimum ventilation without interruption of the cardiac rhythm. A slightly faster rate is used for children, and the pressure of one hand is sufficient to compress the heart. Whereas in babies, only 2 fingers are required. You have seen how to maintain an open-air passage by tilting the head back. how to restore breathing by mouth-to-mouth respiration, and when necessary, how to restore circulation by heart compression. These methods have been demonstrated under laboratory conditions. But accidents happen unexpectedly and without warning, at home, on the job, on the highway, or while on vacation. Here are some real-life scenes where one, two, or all three of the basic steps are used to save a life. After fainting, mild heart attack, and many other conditions, failure to breathe may be due only to the tongue blocking the air passage. Opening the air passage in this manner requires only a few seconds. Suffocation is the leading cause of accidental death for children under 5 years of age. In the case of small children, seal both the mouth and nose with your mouth. Faulty drill and makeshift repairs can be a fatal combination. Low voltage currents may cause the heart to go into ventricular fibrillation. The general principles are the same. Position yourself at the side of the victim. Extend the head. Begin mouth-to-mouth breathing. If there is no pulse and the pupils are dilated, begin external heart compression. For heart compression to be effective, the victim must be on a firm surface. Breathing and circulation are maintained all the way to the hospital. At the hospital, expert medical personnel will take over in the race against death. The oscilloscope shows the true condition of the heart, which in this case is in ventricular fibrillation. Attention is still directed to artificial respiration and artificial circulation as the necessary preparations are made to defibrillate the heart. A normal heartbeat restored. Your friend has another chance to live. You, the rescuer, are the vital first link in a continuous chain of action to bring back the pulse of life.
A town with power. And more to come. Within a few years, more power than anywhere else in the world. Thousands of men, millions of dollars, hundreds of crafts and skills, far beyond the dreams of one little boy with one big horn. But the real power of our city is its people, the heart of our city, with the power to help, to serve, to make life better for all of us, with our hearts. Our hearts are where our kids go to school, here or nearby. Good kids, aren't they? Yours and mine. We have to be a little rough sometimes to make them so. And sometimes, by ourselves, we can't give them all we would like to. Some of them we miss altogether sometimes. We, the people, the heart of the city, lost contact with these somehow, some way, but their troubles are our troubles, and we still can help. The lonely one, looking for something, trouble, we have the power to help him find friends and the right things to do. We help those kids whose troubles grew up with them, who need the special skills of trained people to dispel the nightmares, the mental quirks, the fierce, dangerous resentments. We do help these kids, hundreds of them, every year. And we help their families to understand, to do their part. And the heart of our city has the power to help the kids who simply need the right start with the right mother and father when their own are not around to do the job. And we do help. We help the good kids, the normal kids, too. There are more than 30,000 kids in Niagara Falls and the surrounding towns. Most are like these, simply in need of the right places to go, the right things to do, things that by ourselves we cannot provide. But the heart of the city can. The girls, the boys. We help provide that sound body for the sound mind. We turn young energy into friendly competition, and his reward is our reward in the sure knowledge that we have helped, whether he ever knows it or not. We help the bold. We help the shy. Our power to help knows no discrimination, race, color, creed. We help the less privileged, and yes, we help the better off. For no kid is well off unless he knows how to live and work and share with others. Not your kid or my kid, or a kid from either side of the tracks. And here's a kid who ran away from home. He's our kid, too. As long as he needs help, we'll take care of him and send him back where he really wants to be. We have the power to help the kids from broken homes who need us because they have no one else ready to give them what they need most. A place to belong, attention, affection, a warmth in which to dream securely, warmth from the heart of our city. These have our help too. Kids whom an accident of birth left in need of special schooling, expensive special schooling for the retarded. But they have a right to school, just as mine do, and yours. Our help is not just skilled people working every day for others. It is places, too. We have built buildings to keep up with 30,000 kids. And each day, we open the doors to more of them to become good citizens. A building is a place to have a pajama party when homes are too small. To learn a new skill. A place for a small boy to find leaders to admire. A place for a little boy with a big horn to practice long enough and hard enough to make the band. Way in the back, behind his big horn, where his family can barely find him. But the neighbors can still hear him practice. And the people who are the heart of our city aren't just kids. Some of them have lived here all of their lives. People in good health, people whose health needs looking after. People who thought old age would be a time when they would be forgotten. But it was they who forgot the heart of our city. There are people just starting out with us on the other end of the scale, too. For most, we will make a happy place. But some of them will need our very special attention. And who can say when he or she will need help from the heart of our city? Help not only from our gifts of money that make the Red Cross blood program possible at all, but with our gifts of blood as well. And the Red Cross is more. It is help to servicemen, their families, and to veterans. It is first aid and water safety. It is home nursing. And it's the heart of our city, on the spot when disaster strikes, anywhere, anytime. All need the help of the heart of our city. Advances in medical science, improvements in techniques, new knowledge, new drugs, new treatment, all depend upon research, and research depends upon our power to help with gifts of money. Alone, we are helpless before diseases. Together, we can conquer. With our power and with the heart of our city, one day we will conquer this, and cancer, the heart diseases, arthritis, rheumatism, and all the others. The power of our city, the heart of our city, is everywhere. It is felt by all of us, in the lives of the happy, the normal, those who only seem not to need our help to keep them happy and normal. Into every home we reach, your home and mine, with a better, happier, healthier life for all. And we reach those whose needs are more obvious, those who may not even know yet that help is waiting for them. This is our power, the power to help by giving from the heart of the city for services that reach into the lives of everyone. And just once a year, 35 health, welfare, and youth services join in a single appeal for our help, so they can help. How much shall we give? Shall we work a few minutes a week for all 35, an hour a month? It's up to us, for all need our help. Yes, this is the power of our city, the power to help through giving, the heart of our city.
This is the Department of Defense Form 1356. Recorded on it are the vital statistics of one building in one American community, the Municipal Auditorium in Kansas City. Calculations based on these recorded statistics show that in the event of a nuclear attack, this one building could provide shelter for 30,000 people. About 500,000 of these forms are being used to record the results of a national fallout shelter survey. This unique kind of inventory is designed to survey every building, every school and hospital, every major structure in America which could protect 50 or more people from the threat of radioactive fallout. The immediate goal of the National Shelter Survey is to locate and make available adequate shelter space for tens of millions of people. Here is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Civil Defense, Mr. Stuart L. Pittman.
The Shelter Survey is the first step in a nationwide effort to assure that every American will have a place to go in the event of a nuclear attack. Extensive studies of many different types of simulated nuclear attacks have established quite clearly that tens of millions of lives will be saved if shelter space for the entire population is made available. Fallout radiation could spread over most of the country. It would reach very much further than the blast and fire in the vicinity of an explosion. There is only one protection from radioactive fallout: shielding provided by bricks, concrete, earth, whatever material will stop the penetrating gamma rays. The building you live and work in may provide some of this shielding. We plan to make the most of those buildings which can cut off harmful doses of radiation. For example, the central core of many of the buildings in your community, schools, office buildings, hospitals, could offer the best protection against fallout. Some of this shelter space can be in the upper floors of high buildings. Shelters are not all underground. The search for this protected space will reach your community. We want you to know how this is being done and why. I urge you to cooperate with your local civil defense officials on this survey and in the development of a plan to complete the task of sheltering your entire community from fallout radiation.
The Shelter Survey began in August 1961. Special training courses for civilian architect engineers from all over the country were set up by the Office of Civil Defense with the cooperation of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Navy's Bureau of Yards and Docks. At the Army Engineers School in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, the architect engineers were taught how to determine a shelter protection factor. For example, if a shelter has a protection factor of 100, a person in that shelter would be 100 times safer from fallout radiation than someone outside. The unique course in shelter analysis was also conducted in 8 universities throughout the country, like the Polytechnic Institute at Worcester, Massachusetts. At the Naval School in Port Hueneme, California, Navy personnel trained 300 architect engineers. By December 1st, 1961, over 1,200 men were ready to begin the specialized job of surveying space for national shelter purposes. On completion of the course, the architect engineers would conduct surveys in their own areas under contracts with the United States government. These Kansas City architect engineers, now trained in the survey procedure, met with local officials and the Army District Engineer. By studying special Sanborn maps, construction records, and blueprints of buildings, they were able to locate structures to be surveyed. Before starting the actual survey, the architects reviewed their assignment in detail with other members of their firm. Next, they met with Kansas City's Civil Defense Director. As in every community survey, the Civil Defense Director has the responsibility of explaining the purpose of the shelter survey to local building owners and to the citizens of his community. After this meeting, teams of architects began the survey field work. Each team's immediate objective was to locate and identify all buildings capable of providing suitable shelter space. An acceptable shelter would be one in which a minimum of 50 people could live and which could keep the radiation dose in the area within safe limits. Most Americans will be surprised to learn that many of the buildings in their own communities could serve as shelters during an emergency because they already meet these minimum requirements. These shelter areas could be above or below ground. This school basement is typical of one kind of suitable shelter space being located and identified by architects in every section of the country. One of the Kansas City teams of architects surveyed the municipal auditorium and the spacious underground garage behind the auditorium. Between them, the two structures were found to have over 600,000 square feet of usable shelter space. Here, over 30,000 people could receive more than adequate protection. Information on the underground garage alone is even more impressive. With an 8-inch thick concrete ceiling located under 3 feet of earth, the garage has a protection factor of 1,000, or 10 times the federal minimum requirement. The Kansas City architects also surveyed a number of less conventional structures, like this underground factory on the outskirts of the city. They discovered that this subterranean location, with its ideal condition for the manufacture of precision instruments, could provide plenty of shelter space as well. The owner showed them an unused area of the plant and stated his willingness to make this area available for shelter purposes. Elsewhere in the Kansas City area, the team surveyed this modern church building. first inspecting all outer corridors, walls, and stairwells, and finally the area which could serve as the logical place of shelter, the church auditorium. When a local survey has been completed, each team of architects carefully rechecks the comprehensive structural information on every Form 1356. Each form covers the dimensions of one specific building. It records the density and thickness of every wall, the location of every passageway and accessway, the age of the building, number of building parts, physical vulnerability, and a wealth of other statistics. This nationwide inventory of available shelter space is by no means confined to metropolitan communities. It's being carried out in thousands of smaller communities as well. Here in Vicksburg, Mississippi, a local architectural firm was employed to conduct the survey. After the initial conference with city officials, members of the business community, and the Army District Engineer, the architects coordinated their plan with the Vicksburg Civil Defense Director. Later, when the survey has been completed, the job of posting signs and stocking shelter space will be in the hands of the Civil Defense Director. One final step remained to be taken before the survey began. At the office of the city assessor, the architects were given access to the city's building files. By studying these construction records and blueprints beforehand, they were able to save themselves valuable time on the actual field work itself. The first Vicksburg location to be surveyed was a department store in the heart of the town's business district. After the building owner had granted the necessary permission, the architects began the job of recording structural information. For all structures that meet federal requirements, a license permitting their use as public shelters will later be signed by the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Civil Defense and co-signed by the owner of the facility and the local government concerned. While the primary objective of the survey is to locate and identify structures with a protection factor of 100, surveying teams in every community are also recording information on buildings which have a protection factor of between 20 and 100. With certain structural changes, some buildings could in the future be brought up to federal requirements. When a community survey has been completed, all 1356 forms for that community are shipped to the Bureau of Census Office at Jeffersonville, Indiana. The forms are transferred to microfilm, which, after being developed, is ultimately converted to magnetic tape and sent to the Bureau of Standards in Washington. The tape is then fed into these electronic computers. The nationwide inventory is expected to cover close to 500,000 buildings. The recorded information on one building, which would take a professional architect-engineer about 5 hours to compute, can be processed by an electronic computer in less than 1 second. The computer produces a printout showing the shelter capacity and the protection factor for each floor of every structure surveyed. By using these electronic computers, the time required for the National Fallout Shelter Survey will be cut by several months. The next step in the program is to stock all shelter facilities with equipment necessary for survival. In each individual community, this phase of the program will be under the direction of the local civil defense officials, who will receive supplies from the federal government. Along with a 2-week supply of survival rations, each shelter will be provided with sanitation and medical supplies. They will also be stocked with radiation detection equipment. The provisions shown here are being stored in Washington's Union Station, one of the pilot stocking programs established in 14 cities throughout the country. Finally, every community shelter like the one located in this school building will be marked with these yellow and black signs. These signs will be posted outside, inside, and on access routes of every building that has met the federal requirements for providing protection from radioactive fallout. This nationwide inventory of existing shelter space will form the basis for all future shelter planning. It represents a realistic step in a program designed to ultimately make fallout protection available to every individual in every community throughout the nation. It is a program committed to the principle that the safety of the individual and his community is a national concern, and that the national welfare is a concern of every community.
is an X-ray view of a human heart in action. It must beat more than 100,000 times each day if life is to continue. The heart is a muscle, our hardest working muscle. Its job is to pump blood through the thousands of blood vessels. These blood vessels are of two kinds. The veins carry blood from the body to the heart, as these arrows indicate. After the blood receives renewed oxygen in the lungs, the arteries carry it to the rest of the body. This is the greatest single cause of death in the civilized world. One of these diseases is high blood pressure. Blood pressure is easy to measure.
Is it high, Doctor?
It's a little high right now, but I want to check it again tomorrow, and maybe again after that.
Blood pressure may vary greatly in different people and in the same person at different times. For example, any tension or worry may cause blood pressure to shoot up temporarily. Medical science has associated high blood pressure with the arterioles, which branch out from the larger arteries. They are ringed with muscles which can increase or decrease their diameter. For example, note how tension contracts the arterioles. When the arterioles are contracted, increased pressure is necessary to force the blood needed by the body through them. This need for increased pressure causes the heart to work harder. For reasons not yet fully understood, the arterioles may become chronically contracted, and this is the cause of chronic high blood pressure, known medically as hypertension. At first, the heart will respond to this work by increasing in size, like other hard-working muscles of the body. If the demands on the heart are too great, however, it may eventually degenerate because of overwork. Here is a human heart of normal size. A heart enlarged because of extreme hypertension may be doubled in size.
Suppose I have high blood pressure. What'll it mean?
The general rule in heart disease, as in health, is to live up to the capacity of your heart, but not beyond it.
How do you mean?
I mean that the person with heart disease isn't necessarily an invalid. He can lead an active, useful life as long as he knows how much activity his heart can take. Now let's see.
Arteries are the source of another major disease called hardening of the arteries. Normal arteries are smooth tubes through which blood flows with a minimum of friction. In hardening of the arteries, tiny particles of fat are deposited in the lining of the arterial wall and cause a swelling and narrowing of the artery. At the same time, a chemical change may harden the artery. The medical name for this condition is arteriosclerosis. So great is the self-healing power of the body that when arteries do become sclerotic, others may enlarge and new channels may be developed, as shown here schematically. But if the hardening continues, the heart must beat harder to force blood through the narrowed arteries, and blood pressure goes up. The increased burden may enlarge the heart. Sometimes the arteries which supply the heart, called the coronary arteries, become sclerotic. As this model shows, the coronary arteries are richly branched in order to supply blood to every portion of the heart muscle. Sclerotic coronary arteries cause the heart to beat faster because of reduced blood supply and to fatigue more quickly. The increased burden tends to enlarge the heart. If the hardening process progresses to the point of complete stoppage, the surrounding tissue is starved for nourishment. The result is a heart attack, known medically as a coronary occlusion. A coronary occlusion may also occur when a blood clot forms and breaks away to be carried through the bloodstream. Blood clots may form for a number of reasons. Should a clot lodge in the brain, the result would be what is commonly called a stroke. Should the clot lodge in a coronary artery, the result would be a heart attack. This condition is relieved only with complete rest by the patient. the clot may eventually dissolve. If not, neighboring branches may enlarge so that new channels take over most of the work of the clogged artery. Diseases of the arteries cause some 90 out of every 100 deaths due to heart failure. 3 of the remaining 10 are caused by the third major disease we shall discuss, rheumatic fever. Rheumatic fever is usually a disease of young people. Medical science has recently discovered that most cases are preceded by a streptococcus throat infection. A few days up to 6 weeks after recovery from this infection, rheumatic fever may appear. The child doesn't seem to be very sick. There may be tiredness and lack of appetite, may be a low fever. A characteristic symptom may be a slight swelling and pain in the joints, moving from joint to joint, since this disease attacks connective tissue throughout the body, including the heart. The valves of the heart are made of connective tissue. These valves are essential to the heart's normal pumping action. This is how a normal valve looks. These smooth leaves of connective tissue come together to completely close the opening. Its action is shown in this remarkable scene, photographed from inside the heart. The leaves appear translucent here because of the difference in lighting. Here is a similar valve in which the 3 leaves are scarred by rheumatic fever. Such valves are often called leaky. But science has found an effective weapon against rheumatic fever in the use of antibiotics. These drugs can't repair valves already scarred, of course, but they may prevent recurrence of the disease.
If I could have given you this medicine when you first had your sore throat, it's possible you may never have had rheumatic fever at all.
Can I ride my bike yet?
Not for a while. We'll have to build up to that gradually. Now let me listen again.
Faulty valve operation gives the rheumatic heart a characteristic sound called a murmur. Yet heart murmurs come from other causes too and may not necessarily indicate heart disease at all. This is an example of the difficulty of arriving at a diagnosis. In diagnosis, several techniques are used in addition to physical examination. Most important is a complete history from the patient.
It happened just once before. Suddenly felt like something was pressing on my chest. I couldn't catch my breath. Had a sharp pain. Oh, it went away in a few minutes. I don't remember just how long. I thought it was indigestion the first time.
These may be the symptoms of hardening of the coronary arteries, but they might come from a number of less serious causes. Heart disease can't always be diagnosed with certainty, but great progress has been made in detecting the presence of the disease as early as possible. The physician has special instruments to help him in diagnosis, such as the electrocardiograph, which records electrical impulses originated by the heartbeat. Its record reveals minute irregularities and abnormalities which can't be detected by direct examination. The physician is able to look at an X-ray of the heart on a fluoroscope screen to observe its action, size, shape, and location. In special cases, an opaque solution is injected to study of different phases of heart action. A dramatic new technique is the insertion of a tube called a catheter through the heart in order to measure the pressure and oxygen content of the blood in different heart chambers. Advances are being made in treatment, too, with the use of antibiotics, hormones, and other drugs. Dramatic new surgical techniques are used to repair defective or damaged heart and valvular tissue, as in the case of this valve scarred by rheumatic fever. The fight against heart disease is one of the major challenges in medicine today. The use of antibiotics has considerably reduced the dangers of rheumatic fever. Other recent progress in diagnosis and treatment has brought new hope to those who suffer from heart disease and to the future millions for whom it is a potential threat.
Today is a very important day at Patty's school because Captain Clemens of the fire department is here to tell the children what to do in case of fire. Children often are alone when they see a fire, and if they know the right thing to do, they may save a house or even a human life. The main thing is be calm, stop and think, and then do the best you can. The children like Captain Clemens and join eagerly in the lesson. He asks Jack how he hurt his hand. Jack was burned while roasting hot dogs. His hand is bandaged neatly because his mother learned how to dress burns at the Red Cross first aid class. The captain compliments Jack on the fine bandage and explains to the children that it is best to use a burn ointment for small burns, but for large, dangerous burns, cover the wound with a dry, clean dressing and rush the patient to a doctor. There are many good ways to treat burns. The important thing is that every family should have an emergency kit with bandages, dressings, adhesive tape, and simple remedies for burns and other accidents. More fires are caused by matches and smoking than by any other thing. In lighting a match, always strike the match away from you so that the flame will not burn your clothing. An easy way to remember about dangerous Mr. Match is that he has a head, but no, you have to be the brain for his head. Never allow a match to go out alone. Chaperone your match. Little children 3 and 4 years old have started many fires with matches. If you break the match before you throw it away, you can be sure the match is out. Keep matches in a safe place, out of reach of fire, and have ornaments and lights that catch fire easily. Here, Christmas wrappings are piled near an overloaded fireplace, dangerous because of flying sparks. Keep a metal screen in front of a fireplace, and never leave papers near a fireplace, a stove, or a heater. Oily rags and liquids that burn easily, like gasoline, must be kept away from stoves because they can catch fire from a spark or even from intense heat. Next to matches and smoking, defective wiring causes the most fires. Electrical cords wear out and may give off sparks, fires. We all have seen the corner mailbox, police signal box, and the fire alarm box. Every city has community helpers to guard and serve the people, like firemen, policemen, and mailmen. In case of fire, the first thing to do is to call the firemen, but never break the glass in the fire alarm box unless you are sure that there is a fire. Captain Clemens explains to the children what to do if their clothing catches fire. He has a doll on a stick and shows how by rushing the stick through the air, the breeze fans the flames and the doll's dress burns faster. The captain's assistant sets fire to the doll's flimsy dress and shows the children exactly what would happen to their clothes if they ran. Never run, as this increases the heat and flames. Hot air rises swiftly to a person's face. If your clothing catches fire, therefore, it is best to fall to the ground, roll over, and shout for help. If there is a blanket handy, roll in the blanket and smother the flames. George shows the class what to do. He rolls over and over and yells with all his might. The captain says he does it exactly right and asks George to do it without the blanket because there is not always a blanket near. If children do the right thing, they can put the fire out before they are badly burned. A person may die from breathing hot air as well as from flames. The children will not forget this rule. Lie down, roll over, and shout for help. In a house, it is important to try to breathe the purer air near the floor or at the window. Several years ago in this neighborhood, the terrible Chatsworth fire burned 50 homes. Many people were left homeless. Captain Clemens asks if any of the children were in this fire. Patty waves her hand. Indeed, did see the fire. They stopped the fire right in front of her house. The captain asks Patty to tell the other children what happened. And this is what she told the class. The day started just like any other day, except it was hot and sticky. Patty was helping her father herd the goats at milking time, although she was only 5 years old. Her father put Ginny, the goat, on the platform so that Patty could milk her. It was hard for Patty's little hands to learn to milk, but her father was proud of her and said that she already had a good milking stroke. Patty always liked to help and tried to do the things her brother did. You can see how this day started just like any other day. It was great fun, and Patty was proud to carry the heavy pan of fresh, clean milk into the barn. Then suddenly things began to happen. Fleeta whinnied. The geese flapped their wings angrily, a sign that something was wrong. Mother called to Patty, and Patty's brother Bill yelled, "Father, Father, there's fire, fire!" First, all that Patty could see was a tiny curl of smoke creeping up the ravine. Everything was a yellow, pinky light, and far away the smoke rose over the mountain ridges. Patty's mother told her to stay where she could see her. Her mother telephoned in the fire alarm to the fire station. Tongues of flame crept over the top of the hill toward their house. Patty's father, Mr. Garman, always knows what to do, and in 3 shakes he and Bill hauled their hose up the hill across from the Garman house. Bill held the hose steady, but his face looked scared and he kept mumbling as if he were praying. The flames spread along the ground, catching fire to everything. As far as you could see, there was smoke, and a bad wind came up. A fire is spread by flames and also by the terrific heat that blows ahead of the flame, catching fire to everything in its path. Farther over, Mr. O'Brien's barn was burning. Mr. O'Brien kept 3 animals, Daisy the cow and 2 work horses, Don and Pet. Daisy and Pet both were burned to death, but Don was saved. In answer to Mrs. Garman's telephone call, county fire trucks began to arrive. Mr. Garman jumped on the running board and directed the driver over the hill where several homes were in danger. The fire trucks seemed to go in every direction. Mr. Emery pointed far away where the flames were getting out of control. The fire spread so fast that many homes were in danger. More firemen rushed to help. They moved fast. The ladders and large hose were heavy, but each man rushed to do his particular job. The firemen train every day to become more efficient, and they have had long experience in putting out fires. They have a great responsibility to save human life and property. Teamwork is necessary to fight a fire. The firemen are expert at working the large nozzles. The roof fell. Firemen can change the length and width of the stream of water. They use a strong, solid stream for putting out the fire. A wide spray of water is used like a screen to protect the firemen as they go toward the heat and smoke. One man alone could not handle the large, heavy hose. The firemen advanced steadily toward the fiery furnace. They took turns at the front of the hose. As the smoke became too much for the front man, another took his place, and he moved to the back where the air was better. The water stopped the blaze and kept the heat and flying embers from spreading the fire. The front man turns the nozzle to change the stream of water. Every home should be prepared for a fire. The garden hose should always be attached to a faucet. No human could enter the house in these flames, but the problem of the firemen is to see the flame does not spread. Pete Dawson's home was completely destroyed, and he and his brothers and sisters had no place to live. In bad fires like these after an earthquake or an atomic bomb, many people are hurt or killed by falling objects and walls. People should stay far away from burning buildings. The center roof fell first. Then another roof went down. Back at the Garman Ranch, the boys beat out the flames with gunny sacks. They were tired, but proud that the firemen trusted them to handle this part of the fire alone. This relieved the firemen to work on the other side of the ridge where the fire was raging. Mr. O'Brien's barn still was burning. Patty's mother and Bill pulled a hose up to the back of the barn. Her father was worn out, and Bill relieved him on the hose. Bill could be counted on to do a job like the older boys. But what happened? Bill was overcome by the smoke. Mrs. O'Brien, too, was hurt, hit by a falling branch. Patty's sister Barbara told the firemen on the truck to call the ambulance to pick up Bill, Mrs. O'Brien, and Ruth O'Brien. The ambulance was standing by in case anyone was hurt. In this terrible fire, no people were killed. due to the quick thinking of the men and prompt first aid. The Red Cross always is ready to help in an emergency and gives aid to the people who are in trouble. The men lifted Bill carefully and placed him gently on the stretcher in the ambulance. He was not dangerously hurt, but his leg was burned, so his mother wanted the doctor to check him. The doctor treated Bill's leg, which was not burned seriously. Later, he was back helping with the fire. Mrs. O'Brien and Ruth O'Brien were taken along at the same time. Ruth's arm was burned, so off they went to the emergency hospital that had been set up in the school. Patty couldn't help crying. Her mother told her to stay near Ben, who milks the goats. Generally, a child can help most by staying out of the way of the people who are fighting a fire. Why, Charlie and Nellie from Mr. Mardell's ranch are running away. Probably someone led them out of a burning barn and let them run away to safety. Nellie's hurt. Patty herded the goats to the end of the corral, away from the smoke, and tried to talk calmly to the goats to keep them from getting excited. They might have stampeded and hurt each other. Her baby goat was trembling. If the fire should come too close, Patty's father would move the goats to another pasture. Back over the ridge, the firemen were trying to save Janie Brighton's home. How could any human being enter a building in the dense smoke? What causes these terrible fires? People are careless. They throw away matches and cigarettes that are still burning. They even smoke in bed, go to sleep, and drop their burning cigarettes. The firemen pulled out a burning Davenport. The fire can smolder and spread while a person sleeps. This fireman stayed near the floor because in a burning room, the air near the floor is better and easier to breathe. Flames and hot air rise and create a draft, which draws in the cool air near the floor or ground. See how the hot air and smoke rise from this house and the clear air sweeps in below. After a fire, you often see the firemen working in the attics, pulling out the walls and floors. It seems like unnecessary destruction of the building, but it is important to be sure that no hidden fire is buried in the frame to start up later and cause another fire. The firemen do everything they can to prevent water damage. Reporters and news photographers go to all large fires to learn about the fire and also to find human interest stories for their papers. Each man tries to get the news to his paper first. The tired firemen hoped or no new fires would spring up. The large number of fire trucks showed that many firemen still were working throughout the hills. The hook and ladder. You understand now why this fireman wore a helmet that would not burn, and a coat that would shed water and that was extra heavy to protect him from the heat, to tighten the joints that hold the lengths of hose together. The tools the firemen use most often are hose, nozzles, ladders, axes, and spanners. Bernie O'Brien pats old Don, the horse that was saved from the flame in O'Brien's barn fire. Mr. Emery told Mr. Garman about the damage at High Point. Refugees who yesterday had a nice home now trudged through the ruins hoping to save something of value. Nothing was left standing. Just an old car and the old stove. Poor Millie and Todd. Who wants an old roasting pan? Everything gone. And Millie's doll. It just seemed more than they could stand. After a great disaster such as a fire, earthquake, or atom bomb explosion, lack of water may be the most serious problem of all. More fires might break out, and so Mr. Horner tried to dig out the water pipes that led to his home. Water is needed to put out new fires and for washing and drinking. Electric wires broke and fell to the ground. They might be live wires and might burn seriously or even kill the person who touched them. After any accident, never touch a fallen wire. Mrs. Garman thanked Mr. Emery for helping to save their farm. And Patty thanked him too. Just think, he let Patty hold the telephone that he used to convey messages from the front lines of the fire to the fire headquarters. Patty was too little to fight the fire, but she did exactly the right thing. She stayed out of the way of the firefighters where her family could keep an eye on her. The Garmans felt like giving thanks that their home was spared. The black, burnt grass in the pasture on the hill showed that the fire was stopped right at the road in front of the Garmans' house. How close it swept to their goat barns. Billy's face looked sad and tired. That day he grew up. It was a hard day, but he found out that in an emergency he could count on himself to do the right thing. Patty cried. Her mother comforted her and told her what a good girl she had been. Small children help most in a fire by staying out of the way. The Garmans' close escape made them feel humble and thankful, and they wanted to help their neighbors. Could you help as much as the Garmans did?